Is freedom the right to die like a dog in the gutter? Does freedom mean that you have, like Henry Ford did, an opportunity to run up substantial debts while trying to build something? And then if you can't make it work, the ability to wipe those debts clean in bankruptcy. He declared bankruptcy 7 times before he finally got it right. Henry Ford did. Is that freedom? He couldn't do that today. The bankruptcy laws have been so tightened. So, what is it? Damien in New York City says here you disagree with me. You go right to the front of the line. What's up, Damien?
How are you, Tom? You know, I'm fairly conservative, but I do find you a bit more on the reasonable end of the spectrum with my liberal counterparts. But I guess one of the things that I'm actually wondering is, you know, nobody is very detail-oriented, whether they're on the right or the left. And I guess, where is the line? You know, you talked about freedom, right?
Yeah.
What is freedom? Well, if you're saying that you can't have freedom without shelter, well, are we supposed to give everybody a house for free?
No.
And then if that's the case...
No, but I'm not suggesting that, but I am saying that if there are people who literally do not have a place to stay, that, yeah, I agree with George Washington. We should provide housing for people who are absolutely destitute.
Well, no, listen, I don't, honestly, I'm fairly conservative. I run conservative circles. I don't think, there isn't anybody that I know who would want people out on the street. I think that's a little bit
okay, so you're arguing in favor of the idea that housing should be a right.
Well, I'm for
even if it's a crummy housing. I mean, even if it's like a homeless shelter, you know, where I don't know if you've ever been in a homeless shelter, but I'll tell you, it's crummy housing. But at least it's something.
But I'm for a safety net. But I think, you know, if you remember the governor from New Mexico, who, you know, I was really taken by her speech at the GOP convention. She said, you know, what do we do? Do we talk about welfare as a hand up? Or do we talk about it as it's a way of life? And I think too many people on the left talk about it as a way of life for certain people who they make excuses
Please name one.
Being able to get to work.
Please name one.
But
one person on the left who takes that position.
I talk to constantly. And
no. This is a straw man that you will hear constantly on Fox News and from the right. But please identify one commentator, one politician, one elected official in the history of your life who has suggested that welfare should be a way of life. Name one.
Well,
one liberal.
They would say that, but well, hold on. If you look at
you cannot name one because nobody on the left takes that position. It is a phony baloney position that people like Sean Hannity and others on the right promote. It's called a straw man. You create something that doesn't exist, and then you argue against it.
Well, look, I'm more of a libertarian, so I'm more of like a Ron Paul guy. But I will say this, you know, if you look at it from like President Clinton during his awesome speech at the DNC, he said, look, you know, he was bragging about what he had done, and he was talking about welfare reform.
Right.
And, you know, prior to when the Republicans took over both houses of Congress in '96, he didn't sign welfare reform, if you remember. He only signed that after the GOP controlled both houses. So, and now he takes credit for it. So, I mean, you know, look, both parties are very disingenuous when it comes to things. And it's just, I think now people...
What does that have to do with this core argument of whether the what Sarah Palin is referring to as free stuff is or is not important to actually have freedom in a free society?
Well, my point is how much freedom are we talking about in the sense of, like you had said, you know, we need to have, you know, you can't be free if you don't have health care. You can't be free. You know, look, here's my bottom line.
I'm not saying you can't be free if you don't have a car. I'm not saying you can't be free if you don't have fancy clothes. I'm not saying you can't. Right. But there is, you know, Abraham Maslow identified his hierarchy of human needs. There are these basic things that are essential human needs, whether you have an IQ of 150 or whether you have an IQ of 50, whether you're fully able or whether you're severely disabled. It doesn't matter. These are basic human needs. They need to eat. They need to regulate your body temperature.
I think people from the right and the left have been arguing this, back and forth for a long time. But if you do look
Not
at
really.
I think so. I think, look, the bottom line is I talk to people all the time in my profession, and they tell me, well, you can't raise a family on this. And my answer is a little cold sometimes, but it's, well, who ever guaranteed that you have a right to have a family? And my thing is this: if you can't support a family on what you're making, then either get another job or you shouldn't have a family then. The Constitution never guarantees that you can have the house on the hill with the 2.5 kids and the picket fence. There is no guarantee.
Again, please identify for me one liberal who has ever suggested that everybody in America should be, instantly and magically earning the 50, 60, 70,000 bucks a year.
I will tell you right now, Barney Frank. Barney Frank was on the floor.
Frank.
No, Barney Frank was on the floor of Congress talking about the right of home ownership. If you don't believe me, you can look it up on YouTube. He was arguing about the right of home ownership. There is no right to home ownership. Yeah. It's called, you have a right to home ownership when you have enough money for a down payment,
sure,
when you have the credit, and you have, so there is no right.
Yeah, I would submit to you that your description of Barney Frank was taken out of context, because Barney Frank has never proposed legislation that would give everyone a house.
Well, why do you think Maxine Waters, who was praising her good friend who was running Fannie and Freddie, was saying there was no problem with Fannie and Freddie? We don't have a problem with Fannie
again,
and Freddie.
You're wandering off into the weeds here, Damien. Let's get back to this core point of at what point, where do you draw I'll tell you where I draw the lines, okay? And you can tell me where you would. I draw the line where I think as a society, we need to have a social safety net that will catch people in the areas that literally have to do with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the ability to be alive. In other words, healthcare, housing, food, and arguably transportation, public transportation, so that people can get to work if they can get a job. Now, I'm talking about things like buses and subways and whatnot. But and I would submit that those things should be, if people don't, if they literally don't have the bootstraps to pull themselves up by, those are the bootstraps that we need to provide to people.
Well, I'll tell you this. This is where I draw the line, is that, before you start making decisions on, having a family and having your own place and having,
I'm not talking about those things.
Planning better. We should be planning better.
Again, you're going off on a tangent here, Damien. Where would you say? And I would add to that, by the way, the ability to start your life over again, to reinvent yourself, which means going back to the bankruptcy laws we had before the Bankruptcy Reform Act of a couple of years ago, and so that it's more like the way it was when Henry Ford and Thomas Edison were around, and you can try, and if you fall and fall and fall and fall, finally you get it right, and boom, you got Ford Motors, and I think that those are the core things, and then in terms of those things that should be provided for by government, I think education is a core thing that I think that we should all have a right to education. I agree with Thomas Jefferson on that, and that anybody who's capable of being educated should.
Talk about education. But if we talk about education for one moment, and I know you've been giving me a lot of time, and I appreciate that. Like, if you look at schools, say, near where I live on Long Island, people will complain, like Al Sharpton or one of these, activists will say, it's not fair that Garden City High School or their school district has an uber amount of money, and then you look at Roosevelt High School or Hempstead High School, and they don't have much.
Right.
My answer to that would be, well, then it's a local issue. And it's up to the local people to determine how good their school district is.
So you're a fan of the Lucky Sperm Club theory?
What?
You're a fan of the Lucky Sperm Club theory. If you were lucky enough to be born to parents who are affluent or live in an affluent area, good on you. You get to grow up and be Mitt Romney. But if you are in the unlucky sperm club and you're born into Appalachia in West Virginia, then where there's no money, and there's not enough money, there's not enough of a tax base to even support schools, then screw you.
Not really, because if you look at it, there's a school in Kansas. All right, it's a farming community, which they don't have enough. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have any smart boards there. It's basically out of a barn. They have a very high SAT rate scores. They have very high placement for
those unusual exceptions, Damien, are the things that prove the rule. I mean, I could say the same thing about the Amish schools. You're going to find exceptions that prove the rule, but the general rule is that if you look at the states that have the best educated, the best outcomes, they're the states that have money. They're the states that have a solid tax base. They're mostly the blue states. And you look at the states that are sucking down the federal money, that are taking your and my tax dollars, they're mostly the Republican states. And if you look at the nations that have spectacular educational outcomes, the two highest ones in the world are Denmark and Singapore, which are completely different countries. Denmark is a democracy. Singapore is almost a dictatorship. But in both those countries, they pay the teachers the same as they pay doctors.